Hey, Motorman here with another class video. This is from Sunday's class, and I'm starting off with the last exercise, the snowman. And as you can see, we've got 4 motorcycles in this exercise. There's my wife leading, and we've got 3 riders who have a real good handle on the proper techniques. They're using their head and eyes, the friction zone, and of course the rear brake. That's what must be used, and if you use it to the extreme, it looks just like this. Now this is the first exercise we do in the class, the slow cone weave, and they've been through it probably 5 or 6 times. Many of the riders got a good handle on it, as this one does. The idea of this is to get that bike swinging and swaying, turning those handlebars quickly from left to right, right to left, and looking well ahead of the path of travel. That's my wife directing traffic. She always wanted to be a traffic cop. Now watch this rider coming through. He's going to go as slow as possible. That's what his instincts are telling him. Keep that bike straight up. Do not let the bike lean, and go very slow. As you can see, that doesn't work very well. Same thing with this rider. Despite the phenomenal lean angle, the rider's trying to keep that bike straight up, and it just doesn't work. This is the offset cone weave. I give the riders 3 ways of going through it. These are left turns and right turns, and what you see right here is the motor officer part of the offset cone weave. I had some riders that were so good they were easily able to do this. Now if you take the long route to that far cone with the green tip, as this rider in the background is doing, it gives you a lot of room to make these left turns and right turns, but you got to keep the speed up. Brain is saying, instinct is saying, go as slow as possible. When you go as slow as possible, it's very difficult to control the motorcycle. Your instincts are completely wrong. Watch carefully what's going to happen now. This rider tries to make the turn, slows down while making the turn, and down goes the motorcycle. It's a simple tip over. If you keep your speed above 5 miles an hour, the motorcycle cannot fall over. Drop below 5, and the force of gravity is greater than the force pulling you forward. Speed through almost all of the exercises should be between 8 and 12 miles per hour. The slower you go, the more difficult it is, and your instincts are telling you go as slow as possible and look at all the things you don't want to hit. In this case, it would be the cones. If you stare at the cones, chances are you're probably going to hit them. This rider didn't turn his head fast enough, and that meant he couldn't get inside the gate. He is using the far gate, which makes it much easier because you have a lot more room. Now watch the rider in the background on the orange motorcycle. He's going so slow he has to duck walk his bike through the turns. He cannot turn the motorcycle at all. The slightest lean of the motorcycle, and he has to slow down and duck walk the motorcycle. I don't know how he rides out on the street. He's got a motorcycle license. I don't know how he does it. But watch carefully. Every time the motorcycle starts to turn, it starts to lean, he starts duck walking the bike. Now, you've seen me talk about duck walking the bike before and what it says about the rider, but this is a perfect example of it. This is what his instincts tell him. Do not let the bike lean, but the bike must lean in order to turn. If you try to make a turn without leaning, you've got to get your speed well below even 5 miles an hour. 2 or 3 miles per hour, and you could duck walk the bike and keep it straight up, and if you turn the handlebars, it will turn. In addition, you can't see that on the video, but he's not turning his head. Now the rider coming up here, he's using the techniques. He's turning his head and eyes. He's in the friction zone. He's got a little bit of pressure on the rear brake, and his speed is up about 8 to 10 miles an hour, and as you can see, the bike practically does it itself. It takes really no effort as long as you turn your head and eyes, and the faster you turn your head and eyes, the better. The rider coming up behind him is on an Adventure Tourer type motorcycle. They have a tremendous lean angle. You could really lean those bikes over, but he's trying to keep it as straight up as possible and once again go as slow as possible. He tends to also look at the ground. If you look at the ground, you're going to have to put a foot down. Now, he's having to duck walk the bike. I'm explaining to him that he's got to pick up his speed. It makes it so much easier. Don't listen to what your brain is telling you. Just try picking up your speed and it works so much easier. This is quite normal. Usually riders get over this about 3/4 of the way or halfway through the class. This rider fought it the whole time trying to keep that bike straight up. And it's not the easiest bike to ride because it's got a very sensitive throttle. So I advise on bikes with a sensitive throttle to actually try using second gear. Now here we are in the intersection. And this is a Goldwing DCT. That's the one with the automatic transmission. This rider's been here before. And that's not the easiest bike to ride, but he does a good job. He turns his head and eyes. He's got just the right amount of pressure on the rear brake and coordinate that with the throttle, and it works very well. This rider is a retired motor officer. He is using the techniques to the extreme and really getting aggressive with that motorcycle. That's what it should look like when you use the techniques to the extreme. This is also a practiced rider. Again, using the techniques to the extreme, turning his head and eyes, friction zone, little rear brake. This rider told me he's the first time at the class. He rides like a motor officer because he's practiced the techniques from my video. He said he watched it so many times and then went out and practiced and just got better and better. He is ready actually for a motor officer course. I would think he'd get through it in one day. Here's the rider who's trying to keep the bike straight up. Again, too slow, straight up, looks down, foot goes down. Now we're back to the snowman. Again, this is the rider who uses the techniques to the extreme. He's not using his instincts. In fact, his instincts now are technique. As you can see, it looks extremely easy, and it is when you use the proper techniques. Don't listen to what your brain tells you. Now watch this rider. She's going to try to keep the bike straight up. She doesn't want to turn her head very far, and she likes to look at the things she doesn't want to hit, which is the orange cones. Instead of looking for the green cones, she looks at the orange cones, and she has to ride out of the exercise. Here's the very first shot that I showed you. This is all the riders at one time in this exercise using technique to the extreme. Each rider simply has to look at the rider in front of them, because wherever the rider in front is at, that's where they need to be a split second later. Head and eyes, friction zone, little pressure on the rear brake. I hope you like these videos. If you do, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And I'll have another one up in 4 or 5 days or so. Till next time, this Motorman signing out.